when you are trusting of the process and you just kind of remain open to it, you will see that the emotion does come all the way up and it will come all the way out and dissipate. And you really trust that part of it.
Hey, beautiful. Welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self-love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things emotions, energetics, and self-awakening. And we have Dani Wright, also known as the Witch Next Door, back on the show. And I couldn't be more stoked. Oh my gosh. I couldn't be more stoked to welcome her back. We have so much in the works between this show and her podcast, That Witch Podcast. I just love co-creating, collaborating, talking to you. It's so wonderful. So she was back on this podcast last November. Can you believe it was that long ago?
My
Cannot.
God.
I know. I can't believe it seemed like yesterday, but then it's like there's been so much since then. So yes, go check out. It was episode 113 of this show. I'll link it in the show notes. And today she is back and we are here to talk about her experience with root cause therapy. So Dani, welcome back to the show.
Feels so good to be back. Jenny, you and I just have that naturally like dip, 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 like
I
all
know.
the dots connect, all the pieces just fall together as soon as we start talking. I totally felt that the very first time that we recorded, which was
Yeah,
our first time talking, was recording
it
for
was.
Naturally Empowered Living. Yeah. I would have never guessed that was in November.
But to
I would
think,
have easily told you February of this year. That's
yeah,
crazy to me. Yeah, yeah.
to think that that was the first time that we talked though too.
And that also feels surreal in like it feels like it's been longer that we've been talking.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That part I'm like, oh, it feels like way longer than that. And at the
right.
same time, I'm like, well, I remember recording that podcast and that doesn't feel that long ago. Time is
Yeah,
such a fake thing, huh?
isn't it a fake thing? I love it. So I'm super stoked to jump in to, I've had a couple of these episodes already, bringing on clients that have went through a root cause therapy, 3 sessions, 5 sessions, I believe, but just have had some sort of substantial experience with root cause therapy. So here you are, you have received 4 root cause therapy sessions. And for the listeners that might be newer here, we are so grateful that you're here. I'm pulling out my little brochure that I got in the mail because I'm gonna have it at our physical location. I'm so excited. But I loved the description, the copy that I put in here of what root cause therapy is, just a little snippet. So for new listeners, if you're like, what is root cause therapy? It is a trauma-informed modality that clears subconscious root causes and completes unprocessed emotions, breaking cycles between anxiety, depression, addiction, self-sabotage, emotional triggers, unresolved trauma, unwanted habits, patterns, cycles, and so much more. And this, the subconscious getting to that root of where that origin of that trigger is, or where that response is, or that reaction is, we're bringing it to light to be able to be consciously aware so you have that lasting change. And I just got chills through my whole body because a session I had this morning, she's actually getting attuned in Reiki right now and we're, connecting on that because I obviously do Reiki too and I'm just like I love bringing the energy, like the energy work within root cause therapy because it's so collaborative, right? I don't know. I mean, I could talk on all that segue too. But Dani, I want to hear so because you and I, we are swapping. I'm so thankful that you are helping me learn about astrology and my birth chart and like the synastry between my family, my kids, and me and my husband. So grateful. And then here you are receiving root cause therapy sessions. So tell me a little bit, like, what were you expecting, or what were you hoping to address, or kind of what were your initial thoughts of receiving root cause therapy?
So I do come to root cause therapy having tried past life regression multiple times. I've had an Akashic Records reading, which is technically where somebody else is accessing your records and they're kind of channeling for you. It's still this very open, connected spiritual container.
Hmm.
Um, requiring a lot of trust, honestly, because that's why I preface all of this way because I'm very lucky that I come into this practice not filled with too much, you know, what is this? Is this going to work? Am I
Yeah.
crazy? Am I sick? You know what I mean? Those are very, very, very normal human left side of our brain thoughts about doing not just spiritual work, but honestly, a lot of therapeutic work in general. There's so many mechanisms in our brain, our coping mechanisms that have set up to be like, what are you doing? Because those things are really, they help us keep on the path of least resistance, like just doing the
Hmm.
same thing over and over and over again. And so when you do try something different to address those things, those voices and thoughts get a little bit louder and it can make it really hard to trust yourself. And so, based on your description beforehand, when we had talked about root cause therapy on that Witch podcast and just in conversation together, I expected some of that similar experience to like a guided past life regression like I've done where you're going into deep meditation, you're being guided by somebody but having to trust what you're seeing, feeling, the sensations coming through and talk about those. The first time I ever did a past life regression, I definitely had a lot of those thoughts. Even in root cause therapy, they've come up before, but it's easy to let them go. Um, I was really focused on this part. I think that when I was going into it, I was really focused on like almost like the time travel aspect of
Hmm.
it itself and trusting that aspect. I I obviously hoped and like had a feeling and a call, like a pull that it would be something beneficial and helpful for me to do. But the positive results and like the positive impact from it are still these little things that have been
Hmm.
surprising me. Like, even though I sought this out and again, knew slash hoped it would help these different things I wanted to address, I I still am surprised by, I think part of it is how quickly some of the impact has been. I think that's
Yeah.
probably been one of the biggest surprises is how quickly. Um, because even if it doesn't like, quote unquote, like solve something within or outside of you, the sheer awareness that it's brought to these parts of myself has made it so much easier and more streamlined of a process to just directly face and interact with those parts of myself
Hmm.
and like shift a decision, change an answer, make a different movement, you know what I mean, than the habit. And I really have to attribute that to going to the root
Hmm.
because I've confronted those parts of myself how many times, you know what I mean? But the efficacy of being able to just like turn directly toward those parts of myself and approach them honestly with like love, compassion, validation, because that's so much of what the session itself is.
Hmm.
I have brought just very naturally, that's why I'm saying it this way. It's almost been, haha, subconscious, right? The subconscious work It's almost been subconsciously, I've been much more gentle with myself and how I
Yeah.
respond to myself. This is definitely radiating out to my loved ones right now and how I'm responding to them and things like that. But yeah, I was expecting I know that I'm gonna have to go into some guided meditation and trust someone and trust myself. I was prepared for that.
Yeah.
I was prepared for like, opening myself up to healing, and yet I also wasn't prepared for like, quite honestly, how kind of quickly efficient this has been. Not to make it sound like, oh, Jenna, I'm broken. I come to you and you fix me.
Right.
And at the same time, there has been something different about trusting these roots that come up and make themselves known that we turn toward. It's been pretty incredible, honestly, in these last several weeks now.
You say something that I feel that it really hit a chord with me. You said subtle because so often, I mean, just in the society that we live in, we want instant gratification. We want things now. We want it to be in our face. We want change like 0 to 100. However, we know it's a long game. It's the evolution. You said it, was it in an astrology session or were we actually recording? Like we grow in to our birth charts. And I still get chills because it's like here I'm talking about something completely different, in terms of like we grow into our higher self or, the alignment with our soul's essence. Same thing. But it's so beautiful because it's the subtleness of it. And I just really wanted to make a note there because I mean, I've had many experiences, myself included, receiving root cause therapy sessions, and sometimes it's just like just that little awareness, that little just like, oh, I would have like did that completely different, or I would have responded in a completely different way, or my perception of that is completely different. And I feel at peace. I don't feel that tightness in my chest anymore. And going into something else that you said too was just that awareness piece. And so I think bringing in, like, when you're on a healing journey, having that awareness that, okay, like, there's still going to be ebbs and flows, there's still going to be ups and downs, but we're coming into ourselves, but we're naturally falling into our birth chart, our energy of alignment, as what I'm calling. And then things, the opportunities, the doors open. And it was just the subtleness really just, it stuck with me when you said that because that is a big, big part, in my opinion, of healing or, of doing
Mhm.
this work. Or even, okay, so shadow work a little bit. Because you said like you've done other things. Of course, like, and I know that you're big into shadow work. So how can you compare doing other pieces of shadow work? Would you consider root cause therapy a form of shadow work?
That was going to be my first instant response. I was going to say, oh, I would absolutely consider
Yeah.
RCT a form of shadow work. To me, the way I personally define it, is any, what do I say? In our shadow work group, I say any type of true personal development work, in my opinion, falls under shadow work. When you learn about the shadow self and Carl Jung's like theories and studies and philosophy around all of this, I'll be honest, it's fascinating and it makes sense and it resonates. It's also like really wordy. The truth of it is when you like really pull the meat out of all of it, it is it's personal growth.
Yeah.
That's what it is to me. He talks about integration, right? Whole self acceptance, integration. That's is why it's called shadow work and the shadow self, because the point is not to eradicate or release, like get rid of and banish your shadows, I should say. It really is about shedding light onto these parts of yourself and embracing both the light and the dark. That's what integration is.
Hmm.
That is so much of the work that we do together in
Yeah.
session. When you put it that way, like that's so much of the work that we do in session. Now the reason I use the phrase or the words any kind of true personal development work. The reason I word it that way is because we all know the trope, and we maybe even have participated in it ourselves before. We all know the trope of going to therapy, for example, and saying what you know you're supposed to say,
Right.
showing up, being able to tick the box. I went to therapy today. Check the box. I exercised. I drank enough water. There is a way to go through and like check all these boxes simply on this total surface level of like, I checked those boxes.
Hmm.
And there's a complete difference between really like fulfilling those types of activities, bringing full mind, body, and spirit awareness
Hmm.
to those things. And so this is why therapy, for example, just in that like big umbrella of just general therapy, like talk therapy especially, this is why you'll hear so often people say like, "Oh, therapy doesn't work. Therapy didn't work for me." There is either a problem with the therapist, a problem with the relationship between the therapist and the client, or the client's not putting their heart, they're not really doing it. They're
Yeah.
not really actually doing the true personal development work. Root cause therapy is similar in that I could show up and fake it, so to
Yeah.
speak. I could show up. This is free to all of us at any time. I always tell people, I'm like, nothing will just automatically fix you. You really have to put your heart out there. You really have to be vulnerable. And this requires trust. There are, you know this firsthand, Jenna, there are things that come up in session, if not most, probably at least three of our four sessions. The things that come up, I usually say when it like the images start coming through, I'm like, what? Like I wouldn't have there's a million memories I would have assumed this would have been associated with. There's a
Yeah.
million different experiences I will, that I've harped on out loud and told people or talked about in therapy, even actually, to continue using that example.
Hmm.
It's rarely what I actually expect to come up. And that requires so much trust in the moment, trust in
Yeah.
myself, trust in you, trust in the process itself. There was one particular session that I like could not get over that. I could not get over me at the little lunch table day.
Hmm.
I'm
That's
like,
what I
to
just thought of.
this,
Yeah.
yes, today, to this day, I'm like, I told my best friend after that session. She was a part of that memory.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, do you remember that day at the picnic table? And she's like, we were at the picnic table so much. I'm like, exactly. Like, who would remember? But I've had some of my most profound growth since that session specifically
Yeah.
from this root that I never in a million years would have thought was a root. Um, the only reason that happened is because I really turned toward that shadow. That coming up to me is the same exact process as a shadow coming into the light. And the work that you do, Jenna, and that you help us do is a guided, safe way of doing that, of bringing up the shadows that are asking to be seen most at that time.
Hmm.
And part of what root cause therapy is not just bringing them up into the light so you can see them, but it's like really seeing them,
Hmm.
interacting with them, feeling with them. Um, all of that. And then it is never this, okay, we're gonna get rid of this memory. We're gonna sweep it out of the timeline. It's not like that at all. Again, I forgot about that memory. If anything, I wouldn't have even
Yeah.
thought of it because it was such a run of the mill thing, whatever, part of my childhood. And in that safe, guided container, I am able to bring that up, fully see her, meaning, this younger version of me, and feel right alongside her, like
Mhm.
really feel and do that feeling. And you are so wonderful at always like checking in right after. Like we'll do this beautiful healing work in that moment with the shadow. And like, again, to me, that's like the shadow coming up. So it's so incredibly shadow work because if you think about the fact that we don't like to like look at our shadows, we like to sweep them under the rug.
Hmm.
In this particular memory shadow that came up, this was a version of myself I had a hard time looking at. That was a lot of the stuff you and I were working on in that session was like appearance and looking at. And so this is actually a really good analogy for what I'm talking about. But I mean, I turned toward her. I really looked in her eyes, like really, really looked upon her. And we did our full emotional release. But then you are so good about gently coming back and going, how's she doing down there?
Hmm.
That's what makes this so quintessential shadow work to me because of how much I believe we're not meant to demonize our shadows and
Yeah.
sweep them under the rug and have this purpose of getting rid of them. It is much, much more about going back to that time, whether it's in this lifetime and timeline or a different one. It really is about going to that version of yourself and being there for yourself.
Yeah.
And that is way more powerful than you'd maybe expect it, but it sure is. Holy cow. So yes,
Yeah.
this it's definitely it's integrative. It's integrating both your light and your dark. It's true personal introspection, and all of those things fall under
Hmm.
the category of shadow work to me.
Yeah, that was a beautiful explanation. And I just want to go a little deeper in terms of this is not your session, anything that we experienced, you and I, but just working with other people that have dealt with different sort of addictions or traumas or abuse. And you might be a little triggered and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to relive that experience. Like I got chills, like when I just said that. It is, it's almost like we're not detaching, but we're staying within your body because you are the one holding on to whatever emotion that you were feeling within said experience, within said event. And that's where like the gentleness, the gentle approach comes in to where we bring this back into our body and what we were experiencing in that moment. So there was something that you said too with the self-trust piece. Yes, it was self-trust. And this kind of brings this full circle too, because also, like, we, a lot of people that I work with, when I got started within root cause therapy, I was like, oh, I don't trust myself in this, with this shadow, or this piece of me I am shoving under the rug, or this piece of me I am detached from, or that anxiety piece of me. I want to push her away so I can feel happy again, or I would grab for that bottle, or like whatever you would do to numb or to cope or to get away, right?
Mm,
It's, I know like self-trust, like some of these words might sound triggering. So you need to trust yourself. You have to honor and accept all parts of you. But to make this a little more generalized or gentle, you simply have to be open to healing. Like be open to possibly one day acceptance, to possibly one day honoring and loving. Because I know, and I know that you could probably attest to this too. I know how hard it is at times to love yourself. And I know like being in those thicks of the lowest of the lows, and you're like, either this isn't gonna effing help me, I'm too far gone, there's no way. You just have to be open to healing. Like when you get on your hands and knees, I remember a moment where I would be on my hands and knees and just like pleading, like, I'm giving it to you. Like, what's that saying? Like, Jesus, take the freaking wheel because I don't know what to do anymore. And I just got chills again because
mhm.
that is when you are just open. Even, I could even say effortlessly open because that's where the guidance comes in. That's where, that piece of that safe container. But again, with what you're saying, like you still have to be here intentionally,
Yeah.
being willing to show up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that you bring up something really, really important there because that is part of why I disclaimer like some of the different modalities and methods and you know what I mean, different types of therapies or self-exploration that I've tried. been doing that type of work for a really long time now. Um, I've done it with therapists who should
Yeah.
not be therapists. I've done it with incredible people that were in my life for a season when I needed that. I've done it through, again, so many different modalities. So I have this beautiful, like, blessing and privilege of being able to show up and be a little bit ready
Yeah.
to let Jesus take the wheel, first of
Yeah.
all. Like, you know what I mean? Like I practice that. I practice that in my profession. I practice that in my personal life a lot. But that's kind of the kicker word there is practice.
Hmm.
The only way you open yourself up to allowing any type of inner guidance, which is what builds, right? Following that is what builds your
Hmm.
self-trust, is by opening it all. You're
Yeah.
so incredibly right. And this is something that, like, even in my own, like, recovery program of, like, the support network and tools that I work with, I get reminded all the time by that support network. All you got to do is be willing. All you have to do is work on the willingness part, is work on the showing up part. And this is, you're bringing up something, so that's the little nuance. Like, that's the
Yeah.
difference. That's the kicker and what makes it from just showing up in therapy and just talking and not really being in it
Yeah.
because you're not willing. You're still closed.
Yeah.
And if you can even, I will say this, if you don't even have to open all the way,
Hmm.
but if you could show up to root cause therapy with even, like, letting a crack of yourself be open, it
Hmm.
will be enough if you
Yeah.
trust the process.
Yeah. Trusting the process, like just
Yeah.
trusting that there is like your greater good or your highest self or your soul's essence. It wants you, to meet it there. And it's always, I mean, I set intentions and say prayers before every session. It's like, help us merge our energies to be able to benefit her for her highest good. Help her receive what she needs in this moment for her highest good and for her maximum benefit because there's just power. And this is kind of where like the Reiki comes in. Like there is
Mhm.
power in the energetics of this work also. And you
Oh,
don't have to
yeah.
believe in that. You don't. And I'm just saying like I'll have the intentions there for you. But
But if you think about it, even from a scientific point of view,
yeah.
we know trauma gets stored in the body.
Yeah.
We know stress is carried in the body. And even if you just approach that through that very biological
Yeah.
doorway,
Good point.
that's a crack that's open, my friend. That's all I'm saying. That's still a crack that's open because even if you show up to root cause therapy and the way you view it and interpret the whole experience is just subconscious work, I promise it is still absolutely just as powerful and effective. Truly. It's the same thing as dream work.
Yeah.
Dream work you can look at it as just working with the subconscious and decoding your subconscious. You can look at it as working with yourself on a different spiritual plane. And I would argue that both are just as effective simply because you're open to the process. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you brought up that opening because that's so, so relevant.
And I'm so glad you just brought that point up because like where science meets the woo, like I know that you're about that too. I know that. And that's why I say all the time, I don't care what you believe in. Just take what resonates with what I'm saying and or what we're saying in this conversation. And yeah, there's definitely powerful truth there. So I want to put you on the spot. Can you share with us any specific moments or realizations or like just tangible, like, oh my gosh, like this piece, this imprint, like I just remember, or not remember, but like this is different in my life, or this has impacted me. What changes have you experienced?
There's a really, really main one, but then there's a pretty good close second place one too, actually. But the the session I've already kind of referenced has been very impactful for me. And was that our most recent, or was it the one before that?
I think it was
It
the
might
one
have been
before.
before. Okay. Good. That's what I thought too. So I mentioned Jen and I were our intention for the day, we were really working on appearance based stuff. The particular issue, the surface level issue, let me be even more specific. The surface level issue has been a really, really hard time getting dressed. There's other stuff, but that's been like the biggest thing. It's been triggering my anxiety, my ADHD and sensory issues. It has been getting to this point where it's like taking hours out of my week because I'm getting into such a freeze state about it.
Hmm.
And I remember during the kind of, pre-session, pre-healing part of the session when we were talking and everything like that, filling everything out. This is what's so funny about root cause therapy. Your ego will still lead. My ego is definitely still leading and was like, I know exactly what's going to come up today. I know
Hmm.
exactly where we're going. And once again, would just like to reiterate, I have never once been correct about where we, which is hilarious. I that I it makes sense that I go to those things because I've been harping on them for so long.
Yeah.
But if you think about it deeper, of course I could never quote unquote be right or predict it because if I knew the root, would we be looking for it?
Right, exactly.
Exactly. Yes. But it is funny how your ego, if you're at all like me, I do show up a little like, I remember filling out the
Oh yeah.
survey that day and stuff and being like, I know exactly where this is going. I know exactly what this is attributed to. Didn't know it all. Not a great memory that came up, but just to be, blunt about it at the risk of invalidating myself, not what I would call like my most severe. I would never have thought it was a root. Again,
Yeah.
not because I'm trying to invalidate myself, but I'm, in my opinion, I guess, again, my ego's opinion, I've been like, oh, there's way worse things that happened.
Hmm.
One of the really most amazing things about this process has been teaching me that we have no idea why a root is the root.
Hmm.
I've been really in a powerful way kind of surrendering to that. Like you don't need to know the root. You don't know the root, and that's okay. Like anyways, so I don't tangent down there, but that is a piece of this. So it gets brought up. I go into this memory of about 5th grade, maybe 6th grade, but I'm around like 11, 12 years old. There's a picnic table on my elementary school playground. We hung out there all the time. Once again, why I would have been like, what? Something at the picnic table. And, what actually happened at the picnic table, and Jen and I talked about this, what actually happened at the picnic table really wasn't what it was about,
Hmm.
which makes sense why it was so unexpected that it came up. Uh, It's not like these friends said or did anything horrifyingly traumatizing that day. However, it was a day, for whatever reason, that I solidified a type of thinking about myself.
Hmm.
And that was kind of what came up for us. The concept was this huge universal philosophy and concept of beauty, right? Like that was obviously, but to this little 11, 12-year-old girl, I at that time was only taking reference from what I knew,
Hmm.
which was not very much in such a short little human timeline at that time. And all of that came together in, I guess supposedly like just the right way or however you would say it. And a part of how I started thinking about myself and think and approaching myself and approaching this concept and approaching the philosophy of beauty, for example, it got really set in that day. That's where the root got formed.
Hmm.
Um, no wonder I glossed over it so much and missed that root over and over and over again because if you're just from the outside looking in, even when I was describing it to Jenna during session, nothing quote unquote that eventful was really going on. What was the most eventful was going on inside me at the
Hmm.
time. And I had so much programming at that point from just how I was brought up, again, my own environment, who I am as a person, all these perfect things kind of come together. And essentially, like, I was like, well, this was my way of coping with something that was way bigger than my brain was probably actually able to conceptualize at the time. I
Hmm.
described what was going on in the memory. I remember doing the emotional release with you. I remember coming and floating up and out of it. And you, Jenna, followed a little intuitive nudge, I think. And you were like, how's she doing down there? Asking, and you were checking in with me. Again, you do this after every single one, but it hit different that way. And I could hear it in your voice too. And you were like, why don't we just float back down there one more time?
Hmm.
And you had us go back down there. And I can't remember. You told me to ask her something, I'm pretty sure, but what happened and what at least what was in my memory that I remember during session is I took little me's face in my hands,
Hmm.
really close to mine. I didn't look away from her. I looked right at her and right into her and like gazed upon like all of her. And because of the life experience I do have now, this version of me going back and holding that version of me. I do have the life experience now. I do have the point of
Hmm.
reference now. I have been able to explore those philosophies and other views and other concepts. My concept of beauty now, even, right before that session, like that morning, we'll say, was what, 1,000 times bigger, probably way more than that little 11-year-old was able, who had such a short little timeline by that point. That simple, again, it seems so simple, so subtle to use that word again. All I really, again, on the surface, all I was doing was like holding her face and looking at her.
Yeah.
But the profound emotions that came up through from that were, I mean, very multi-layered. There wasn't just one thing that came through. It was very, very multi-layered. Um, but I mean, it's this almost very somatic feeling coming up and through. And because of that opening, I think that when you are trusting of the process and you just kind of remain open to it, you will see that the emotion does come all the way up and it will come all the way out and dissipate. And you really trust that part of it. And that's where the guided piece of RCT comes in. And this is
Hmm.
why it feels like such a safe container because I couldn't get stuck in the scariness of how profound that was feeling in that moment.
Hmm.
Because when you're having that big of an emotional tidal wave come through,
Right.
it feels scary.
Yeah.
And having this trusted person there helped that, help me stay and kind of like hold down and allow it to come all the way out. I remember the few days after following the healing hangover protocol.
Hmm.
I'm so grateful you sent that. It makes a huge difference. I really just tended to myself. And this is what I've noticed after almost every session. And then you kind of like go about your life again after that. I don't know how to describe it. It's not in a bad way, but you kind of like, it's not like you forget about it. You just
Hmm.
kind of go about your life again. And then that's where this subtle magic happens. 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks go by after that. And I'm like, I'm kind of not really having the same issues I was having getting dressed. And it's not like, again, Utah, like this is
Yeah.
perfect, night and day, no. But it's significantly different. The challenge, the inner challenge I was having with that is significantly decreased. It's
Yeah.
it's crazy, crazy to me. And little things like that, I think it helped with what we set intentions about that day. But the impact I could never foresee is like I already like really, really look at my daughter. I already have like done some really good self like work in the mirror and stuff like that. But since that session, because I like really held my little face like that,
Hmm.
this version of me, keep in mind to that little 11-year-old version, I am the higher self.
Yeah.
I You are. I think that's why it's not so feeling like you're reliving
Right.
because you are the higher self. It's cool to realize that. This like broken, imperfect human right now doing a root cause therapy session, you are the higher self simply because you have so much experience and reference that's happened since this other point in time. And so it's been again, those little things I'm always excited to share with you, like, oh, getting dressed is easier. Like I'm noticing those little things, but the totally unexpected things. Like I feel like I'm looking with way more open eyes. And
Hmm.
I thought I was looking with open eyes. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's kind
Yeah.
of yeah.
To bring this full circle, the word that kept coming to me was spiritual reparenting. Like or inner child work. I mean, how often have you heard that term? I do a lot of inner child work, but
Yes.
it's the spiritual reparenting. It's the energetic entanglement of you are still going back to time. Like what is time? You are still her and she is, or you are the higher version, higher self of her, and you're still intermeshed and she's still a part of you. And you can go in there and spiritually, energetically reparent. And that's why I love, oh, and it was that intuitive piece. I'm like, because you were kind of laughing. We were like, oh my gosh, this was the event that we were going to. But it's like we still knew, like, okay, this obviously there was still something there. And segueing into you were saying, okay, this wasn't necessarily one of those like traumatic triggering events with this friend group. However, the beginning half of that session, you shared a lot with me about that friend group
Hmm.
and possibly how your nervous system never felt safe around them. Maybe a couple of friends within that group, but a couple of them, like maybe you didn't feel that safety. So any how an imprint or how, that emotion can get stuck or how that energy can get stuck within our body is two people can have the same identical experience, or it could be something so subtle and you're just like, what? That's how that happened, or that's how that got imprinted. But it's when your nervous system doesn't feel safe, bringing in that safety, or you mentioned the word capacity, when I was already at capacity. So there's something to say there too with there's magic in repair, right? And both of us being parents, because I've thought many times, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm fucking up my kids. And I'm like,
Hmm.
wait, I just yelled, and oh my gosh, it's going to be imprinted. There's magic in repair because it's not that you have to know every single root or every single second of what you're doing. It's holding that space to bring that safety and that acceptance and loving to all parts. And that's what I always have to tell myself with being a parent, in
Yes.
terms of that, because, like, of course, the mom guilt is there. The times when I'm still triggered or overstimulated, it's always like there's magic in repair. And I think holding space for them, because they're still their own people, just like we are our own people, there's still something to say. And if they feel safe, they can process it themselves too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's I when I host shadow work group in that witch school, that's what I when I describe what a shadow is and how it gets formed, I always, I give a little list of examples and I'm like, or it can just be an experience we interpret and cope with in a negative way, even if nobody else did,
Yeah.
even if somebody else would cope with that in a completely different way. This is how it's how it embedded itself into us. And you really do start to learn that there is no shame in that. And I think one of the biggest things that helps in especially subconscious exploration work like this is trusting. And you remind me this at every session. I feel this way before we even met. Your subconscious will not present to you anything you're not ready to
Yes.
see. You will not, you, it just, I personally believe our subconscious mind just works that way.
Hmm.
And you don't have to be worried about that. But it's mind-blowingly subtle. It
Yeah.
really, it's like this huge, profound impact afterwards. And very often what we talk about are like the root or the thing in that day. I'm like, what? This seems like such a little, and that was the only other thing I was going to share too, was the one time we did have a past life come
Mm.
through for a
Hmm.
root. And I will just say that that takes a little bit of extra trust
Yeah.
because again, we've got a lot of society in our head in that moment going, you're silly. Like, this
Yeah.
is nonsense. Like, it's very easy to let societies or whoever raised us to come through. And I can very much attest to that even though I was describing an event and a memory from a past life that this version of Dani did not experience in this life, that session was incredibly profound. I have had totally new way of looking at that particular one was about not feeling safe to relax.
Hmm.
And I have had such a complete turnaround in just how I look at the concept of relaxing since
Hmm.
then. So you really can. It's been, I think it's why I keep bringing up the word trust and the term self trust so much because it's built. I didn't come to you to build self trust, and yet I am doing that so much every time we meet
Yeah.
and more afterwards. Yes.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And just something to note with that past life. And even if going into when you were younger or whatever, again, the beauty of the energetic entanglement or how the energy is infinite. You're releasing every event where you were triggered from that past life all the way to present, when you were that 11-year-old girl at the picnic table to present. And that is so profound. And
Mhm.
talk about the beauty of repair. Like, that's generational. Like, that is generational healing. And I just thank you so much for spending time and
Absolutely. I'm very, again, I asked you about doing it because I obviously had this like, oh, this is something, this is pricking my ears, like
Mhm.
this is calling me, of course. And what's been presented to me from my subconscious has been nothing I've expected. And I've also experienced improvement in, I think that's a good word for it. You know what I mean? I've
Yeah.
experienced improvement in things I came to you specifically about. And I'm experiencing massive growth in stuff that wasn't even on my radar. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah,
it's really subconscious work is just the coolest.
it is. And
Yeah.
I feel like we can talk forever. It's our nighttime for both of us. You have a new puppy I want you to get back to and your family. So just thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
And
yes.
this won't be the last time that we'll have our
No,
conversation.
no, definitely not. No, I am so grateful to you, Jenna. We have such natural back and forth. I love when we talk and everything that comes out in our personal work and our professional work together.
Yes.
So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, That Witch podcast, I'll link that in the show notes too. Go check out Dani. And oh, she does some magical work, let me tell you. Working with her, because with my astrology sessions, like it's a side hobby, side passion. I know I've said that before on the show, and I've just learned and connected so many dots. And your approach is just so, of course, I just jive and connect with it so much. So I will link that in the show notes also. And until next week, our dear listeners, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. We're sending our love and so much light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, boop.
Thank you for spending the sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.